I have just had a string of bad luck with competitions in the past year and so odd months. I've only entered 2, but in both of those I did not get acknowledged for anything, which is fine. That's how it works. You know, you can bring your best and still not win. But also it's kind of based on what everyone else brings, and I am trying to change my luck. Will it work? I don't know, but I'm gonna try my best. In order to try to change my luck, we will be making Maneki Miku. Good luck, right? We can try. So the first thing I'm going to focus on is the jacket, the overlay thing that goes on top of everything. It looks simple. It is not as simple as you would think it was. Bias tape, we have scallops, we have bias bound scallops. With inverted mitered corners, we have beading, we have all kinds of stuff. We have cat keyholes that are also bias bound. It's gonna be a ride just for one single piece of this, but I'm really excited because I've been looking at this cosplay for over a year now and I've been wanting to make it this whole time. So we're making it. We're doing this. It's gonna get done and it's gonna be beautiful, I hope, when it's done. So since we're here together, let's talk about what a Maneki Neko or a lucky cat or a beckoning cat is. So we all know the figure of the cat. Usually we see it in Chinese restaurants, and so we assume that is a Chinese thing, but it's actually Japanese, and it's a little cat that its arms sometimes is motorized and it beckons you. Now the reason it's called a beckoning cat in Western culture, when we want someone to come over, we say, "Come here." But in Japan, it looks like this. So the cat is literally waving people in. Not so fun fact about it being often wrongly assumed to be a Chinese thing. Did you know that fortune cookies also were a Japanese-American invention? And during World War II, when, you know, we took our own citizens and threw them in internment camps, the Chinese adopted it. So fortune cookies are also a Japanese-American invention. But that's a rant for another time. So these lucky cats are often seen holding a koban coin, which is, it looks like a yen, but it's an oval. It's an old form of money in Japan. The hand that is lifted up actually has a difference on what it symbolizes. So if a left hand, that's my left hand, is raised up, that is to encourage more customers. And if a right hand is lifted up, that is to encourage more money for that business. That's really cool, I think. So Maneki Neko, the first like historical representation of them actually being Maneki Neko, because they kind of evolved from other figures, was in 1852, but an advertisement in 1902 shows how popular they were getting in Japanese culture. Now there's a few different stories about the Maneki Neko and how it kind of came to be and what it represents. Some are more gruesome than others, but the most popular one is the story of Naotaka. During the Ken-ei era, Naotaka and some of his soldiers were walking through a thunderstorm. As they're walking through this thunderstorm and it's getting really, really bad, they walk past a shrine. That particular shrine is the Gotokuji Shrine Temple. And as they're walking, they see this cat that is beckoning them to follow him. As the storm worsened, everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, what good luck that this cat brought us into this shrine so that we could be safe and stay out of the storm." And that is kind of the most popular story of Maneki Neko and how they came to be and why these cats are considered lucky. You can actually still go to that temple and buy Maneki Neko items. It is considered the birthplace of the Maneki Neko, but there's a couple of other temples and shrines that claim to be the birthplace, depending on what kind of folklore you are following. So like I said, in Chinatown, lucky cats are very, very popular, and they are often in America called Chinese lucky cats when they're actually Japanese. The Chinese name for them is Jinmao, which is golden cat. But it's really interesting how, you know, we just, as Americans, make things up because we don't care about cultural differences. China and Japan are not the same country or culture. Fun fact, actual fun fact, Hikone City's mascot is a lucky cat. So that is where the shrine and temple are located. and they have a lucky cat as a mascot because in Japan, a lot of towns and cities have little mascots, and that's really cute. That mascot is named Hikonyan, which I think is really adorable. But yeah, that's the city's mascot is Hikonyan, the Maneki Neko. Now, because the lucky cat is considered a symbol of luck, I am going to be hiding a bunch of different luck charms within this cosplay. I am using buttons that are made of yen pieces to bring good fortune. I'm also going to be hiding a bunch of bells in the cosplay because A, I really like auditory things in my cosplays. I've done it plenty of times in the past, but also bells represent good luck in a lot of Asian cultures. Maneki Miku's design also has omamori in it, which are the little wooden blocks that you see hanging from her hair. Those are also good luck charms. Those are often used in temples to make wishes. So there's a lot of features in here that hopefully will increase my luck because gonna need it. The jacket has keyholes in it, and I've done keyholes before. I've done circle keyholes and square keyholes and diamond keyholes, but this one has cat-shaped keyholes. So that's gonna be fun. I went to the thrift store today. That's usually where I get my mock-up fabric. Usually it's just sheets or curtains. It's really inexpensive, and I don't know, it's just nice to not have to buy a bunch of muslin. And I found this sheet that was $3.99. It's like a king-size sheet. And yes, it is washed. I did throw it in the washer. But it has this really soft texture, and because I am planning to wear this cosplay in August in Ohio, where it is notoriously humid, I think I'm gonna make the jacket just out of a cotton bed sheet. We're gonna see how it goes, but I think it's gonna work out really well. This is just like super nice. Super excited. Okay, I have my back piece of the jacket where the cat hole is going. And I have also pressed my seams in the back because I do have a seam right down the middle of the back of the jacket. Now I have to make my keyhole. I don't know if anyone else that does tutorials has to do this because I've made a tutorial on keyholes. I've made a lot of keyholes. I have to reference my own tutorials to remember how to do something. So, we're gonna reference that. Making keyholes is actually relatively easy. I just psych myself out every single time. I am tracing whatever I am making out on my fabric on the wrong sides, and then right sides facing together of the lining and the facing, I am going to stitch that together. Remember, do not sew over your pins. You can hurt yourself and break your machine by doing that. Slow and steady wins the race. We're pivoting on those corners and just continuing to stitch very, very slowly. Now it's time for the scary part because we do have to cut that keyhole out. We are going to cut the inside of the shape that we just traced. Make sure you cut out your corners, little windows, and then you are going to take pinking shears or you are going to cut little angles out, little triangles out to allow that fabric to stretch a little better. I just think it's easier with my pinking shears, so that's what I use. Thankfully, we only have to make single keyholes and not a bunch of double keyholes. Those are way harder. Now, if I did this right, I should be able to just flip it through. This is the worst, scariest part, because what if I did it wrong? What if I messed up on my own damn tutorial? Get out, and I should have a cat hole. I have a hole. Now I have to top stitch or press and then top stitch it, and I'm top stitching it knowing that I'm also going to be putting bias tape around it. So it doesn't really matter that I top stitch it, but we'll press it and then we'll have a cute little cat hole. I don't think I'm gonna even bother top stitching it because again, I'm gonna be putting bias tape on it. So we have a cat hole. This is post-filming hack, middle of editing hack. I am in the process of editing and I realized that I did not film a large portion of the next steps. So what did I do next? I combined the top pieces together, the front and the back together, leaving the sleeves off for now. The lining and the front of the fabric, which are both the same fabric generally, because I hate lining fabric. It's disgusting and it hurts my teeth. So I did that, and then I put bias tape all on the edges of the piece. So the cat hole, the actual jacket of it, I did all of that in one fell swoop. And now we're jumping into the sleeves. The sleeves confused me for a little bit because not only do they have cat keyholes, but they look like they are a part of another piece of it. And because I don't actually have the figure, I'm having to like ask friends who have it and do a bunch of stuff to try and figure it out. I have to do like 8 billion scallops, so I will show you guys how I do scallops. So let's jump right into the beads. God, I suck at this.
So first off, why am I beading on organza rather than the actual sleeve itself? Well, this is going to help prevent puckering, and because I have so many of these like empty negative spaces in here, I need to be able to have it hidden on the fabric. So I'm using white organza that will then get stitched onto my sleeve in these little decal shapes. Because I'm working in such a tiny space, these are very, very small, I am doing one bead at a time. The more beads you do at a time, the less control you have over it. I am stitching a bead down and then going back through the last bead in order to put a new bead on. This just helps secure it so they don't all fall off. Beading is honestly one of my favorite ways to embellish a cosplay and bring it to life, and you can see how tiny these are.
Are there definitely different ways that I could do this? Yeah, absolutely. There's a few ways I could do it. I could do applique, like embroidery. I could do iron-on heat transfer vinyl. I could do fabric paint. Something that I really enjoy about certain cosplays is when you look at something and every time you look at it, you just keep seeing more details. So I like my cosplays to reflect that, which is why I really enjoy beading. Not only that, it's one of those things that like, yeah, it takes forever, but it looks really good. So there's going to be a lot of beading throughout this cosplay just for all the little decorations and decals. But I also just think it's going to look nice. It's going to be fun. And for me, it is a very rewarding task to do just because it's so damn pretty.
Now, because I'm using organza, which frays a lot, I'm going to take these beads and use fray check. Not only is that going to secure my knots, it's also going to help that organza from fraying once I cut it and sew it on. So I'm just taking some fray check and letting that dry around my beaded decals so that I can then sew it on. When I sew it on, I'm sewing these little decals that I've cut out right on top of the front side of the fabric. And you don't want to have your sleeves fully made yet, because if you do, then you're sewing through the front and the back of the fabric, and then you're going to be able to see very clearly that those were put on after the actual thing was constructed. And now we're going to jump straight into our scallops. Scallops seem really scary, but they're not that bad. All you do is you trace a like 40% of a circle, and then you're going to sew the fabric and the lining wrong sides out, right sides together. At that point, I'm going to do one little stitch just to give it a little bit more room to stretch, and then I'm going to continue sewing down that line. As always, slow and steady wins the race on this, so take your time. It is not a race. This is not a competition to see who can sew the fastest. It'll get done when it gets done. Now I am going in and I am cutting almost to that stitch. That is where those scallops meet, but I'm not cutting the stitch. And I'm once again going in with my pinking shears and cutting out my shape for the scallops. Again, if you don't have pinking shears, you can just cut little triangles out in order to allow that fabric to really stretch and look good and do what it needs to do without puckering. After that, you're just going to press those scallops and they end up looking really, really good and really, really clean.
When we made our scallops, I actually didn't really need to do them the way that I did because I am going to end up binding those scallops in bias tape. Bias tape, again, is a strip of fabric that is cut on the bias, 45-degree angle, and it is ironed to have folds. I'm using double fold bias tape that I've made myself, If you watch my corset video, I do have a tutorial on bias tape on that. I don't feel like showing you guys again. Also, I didn't film the process. But we also have to make corners on our bias tape, and there's a couple different ways that you can make mitered corners on bias tape. There is the quilting method, in which you are essentially just folding the fabric in a very specific way, and you're not really sewing it or cutting it or anything. But then there's kind of the way that is normal for cosplayers to do, and it looks nicer, and it holds better, and it doesn't like create as much poofing. It just lays nicer. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. The thing you have to remember about both regular corners and inverted mitered corners in bias tape is that one way looks like a mountain and one way looks like a Pac-Man, and that's how I remember which way to do it. Now, I've been doing this one way for a very long time, and Rose Blue Cause a few months ago posted a tutorial on how she does hers. And I was like, oh, I've never seen it done this way. And all my other competitive friends were like, oh, this is different than I do it. But it works, and it works really, really well. So we're going to use Rose Blue's method because it works better. And yeah, so you're never too old to learn something new.
So first we're going to start off with our regular mitered corners. I am taking my bias tape and marking the angle that corner sits on. It's kind of like a 90-degree angle. This is kind of Rose Blue's method. Now I'm going to go to the back side of my bias tape, fold it over, and I am going to draw my little mountain shapes. This is where the mountains come in. I'm just going to stitch those down in the shape of a mountain. Do not stitch over your pins. You'll break your machine. And then just like every single time we do a corner, we have to go in and we have to cut that. So as we cut it, we're going to make sure that we are not cutting our stitches, because then the whole thing will fall apart, right? So just cut as close as you can without actually cutting that stitch. You're also going to cut out some of that excess fabric so there's not a whole lot of bulk in there, and that's what it looks like when we are ready to turn it. And again, press it. You should be, ironing and pressing pretty regularly in the process of creating your cosplays. And then when we are done with that, we can go ahead and fit that around the corner of our fabric, and we can install the bias tape however we want. I ended up invisible or slip stitching both sides of the bias tape because I needed a lot of control. The scallops are a modified method that just kind of made sense in my brain. So it's similar to how you would do an inverted mitered corner, but because it's scallops, I want a little bit of a softer edge on those corners. All I'm doing is going in and marking where my scallops meet, and I am tracing that angle that the scallops sit on. This is going to allow me to get a really nice curve without really harsh edges or lines or angles, and it's going to fit perfectly for what I'm doing. Now, if this were just a regular inverted miter, it would look like a Pac-Man, but this kind of looks like a love disc, or someone said it looked like I was sewing butts. So butts, love discs, top of a heart, whatever you want to call that. We're going to go with, I guess, butts. And then, again, it fits right on there after you press it.
The bottom of our sleeve is done. Now we have to attach it to the top of our sleeve. And what I am going to do in order to get this the way that I want it is just sew it together. It's going to be covered by a ribbon, so it really doesn't matter how I sew this together, but let's do that. Alrighty, so we have our sleeves installed. For all intents and purposes, this piece is done. But the difference between a regular cosplay and a competition piece is that it's not just pretty on the outside, it's pretty on the inside. Because I can't finish the seams very well on where the sleeves go, I'm going to bias bind them, which is just taking bias tape and sewing it over top of that seam so that there's no fraying edges, there's nothing visible, and like the chances of someone actually like digging into my armpit to see my armhole sleeves are very slim, but I will know it's done.
So I'm actually really proud of this. This is one of the cleanest things I've ever made. I have a lot of interesting details in here. The beading is really cute. I took and slip stitched all of the bias tape on there so that you can't see any stitching on either side. I added the yen buttons with a specific type of knot. There's the sleeve cat cutouts, and yeah, I'm just really proud of how this simple little piece turned out, even though it is just a part of a much bigger thing.
Next time we will be covering the kimono, which I will be making as authentically as I can. I have already started mapping out all of the measurements of that, and maybe something else. It depends on how long the video is, if I can include something else. But we are going to continue working on Maneki Miku with the hopes to finish it by the end of the summer. We'll see. Wish me luck. Thank you guys again so much for watching. This is a very small channel and I am trying to, you know, do something different and new, for me personally at least. And I appreciate everyone who watches, likes, comments, shares, whatever. We are very small, we are not monetized, and we don't have any sponsors. I also have a Patreon that you can go to. The Patreon link will be in the bottom over here, down here. So you can click that if you want to support me and my process of making these, because it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort to make these videos, and really, like, there is a wealth of information that I try to include in this to help prevent cosplay from continuing to gatekeep girl boss, and just like, I just want to share what I know. Today's video is brought by Soren. He helped me iron. He really likes the ironing board. Until we get like actual sponsors, we're just gonna keep naming cats. I got a bunch of them, so I can just keep picking the ones that are helping me at that given time.